Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2022 Hyundai Palisade, we're going to be showing you how to install the etrailer.com Universal Brake Controller Install Kit. But before we do this, why don't we check this out and see what it does and if you're going to need it or not. What this kit is going to help allow you to do is a couple of things really. First and foremost, it's going to give you that 7-way round type trailer connector, as well as a 4-way flat trailer connector. So you kind of get both common connectors there in one package. And what this is also going to allow you to do is have a 12-volt auxiliary power back here. So it can send power, a battery power back here. That way if your trailer has a battery or something on it and it's set up right, you could potentially charge it whenever you're towing it down the road. But you know, that's probably a couple of the less common reasons this is used. Probably the biggest one is to be able to allow you to use a trailer brake controller. And so this is going to come with the necessary components to hook everything up, wire it up, and hook up a brake controller. That way, if you're towing a bigger trailer that has those electric brakes, be able to use this in conjunction with the brake controller and send that power back here to apply those trailer brakes. There are a couple things that you are going to have to grab for this setup to work properly. First and foremost, you're going to need a working 4-way flat type connector already. So if you don't have the 4-way flat already installed, you are going to have to get one. We carry them here at eTrailer. They're pretty easy. There's a plug in the back driver's side corner there. It just plugs in, so nothing really crazy about it there. And that'll allow you to hook up to this and make everything work right. As well as a no-drill long bracket. That way it'll clamp around your hitch and you'll actually be able to mount this up and have a sturdy place to plug everything in and whatnot. Other than that though, at the end of the day, I mean, if you're looking for a way to put in a brake controller and you don't have the factory tow package, this is your best bet. Like I said, going to come with all those components that you need to kind of get the show on the road and get everything working. As far as the installation goes, it's really not super complicated, just more time consuming than anything, a lot of wiring to run, but as long as you take your time, you shouldn't run into too many issues. So hopefully, you know, when we're installing this, it can help get you going in the right direction and make it a little easier on you. So speaking of that though, why don't we go ahead and put it on together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the back of our vehicle, and the first thing you want to do is mount up your 7-way connector. So in our case, ours is going to look a little bit different than the one that comes with the kit, and that's because they already had this previously installed and it'll work, but you know, it's still, all this information applies to the one that comes with it. It's essentially set up the same way and everything else. And in a minute too, I'll grab the one that actually comes with the kit just so you have a visual and whatnot. But so we have that mounted up, and then there's going to be some wires coming off of it. All right, one of them will be a 4-way flat connector, and this is going to plug into your existing 4-way flat wiring. In our case, the customer has a Concha kit installed, and so that's just going to plug right into there. What I do suggest doing though is just taking some dielectric grease and putting it on the terminals, and this will just help protect these against corrosion and things like that. And this is just going to plug right in. Use some electrical tape around our connection here, and then just put a zip tie around it to make it somewhat permanent. And then we're going to have a few more wires coming off of this. One of them will be purple, and we're not going to be using that one. This is for your reverse light circuit, and really, you know, majority of people won't use this unless you have like a you know, boat with reverse lights or surge brakes or something along them lines. If you wanted to hook this up, you'd have to tap into your reverse light circuit on your vehicle. But then you're going to have a white wire, and this is going to be a ground. And so this just runs right along through here and gets attached to the sheet metal up in this area. Here's where the wire is grounded. So just a ring terminal gets crimped on. I believe actually the one in the kit that actually comes with it already has a pre-attached ring terminal. But you just find a clean piece of sheet metal to run a self-tapper through, and that's going to provide you with that ground. So now we're going to have a black wire and a blue wire that comes out of the 7-way. The blue wire you're going to hook to the white wire from the big bundle of duplex wiring that you're going to get. All right, so you cut the gray piece back some, that'll expose 2 wires. And use a butt connector here. I'm using heat shrink butt connectors. They just provide a little more protection against corrosion because the ends seal up, but the ones that come in the kit will work fine too. So this blue wire that comes from our 7-way that connects to the white wire, that's going to be our electric brake signal. And the black wire from our 7-way, that's going to get hooked to the black wire there in our duplex wiring. And this is going to be our 12-volt auxiliary powered. So the way that these butt connectors and all these type of connectors work really is you take the end of the wire and strip the insulation back a little bit. And you can give that wire a twist. And then you take the butt connector and you put the bare end in and then just crimp it down. And like I said, with these being a heat shrink, the way you seal up the ends if you decide to use these is you just come back with a heat source and seal them up. So I just wanted to give you guys a visual on the connector that comes with the kit. And this is it. It's essentially set up the same way. This will plug into your 4-way flat. Blue wire is the electric brake output, so that'll get connected to the white wire in our duplex wiring. Black wire, 12-volt auxiliary power, so that goes to the black wire in our duplex wiring. The yellow wire, that's the reverse light. That's really the only difference from that connector plug we have on there. That one's purple, but in our case, on the one that comes with the kit, the yellow one is reverse. So you can tape that up if you're not using it. And then here's the white wire. That's the ground, so that's what you would attach to the frame. So just wanted to at least give you a visual, and that way you can have something to reference. Just kind of tape everything up, zip tie it, make it look nice and clean, and now we can take our duplex wiring and run it to the front of our vehicle. We're going to go into the engine compartment with it. So I simply just routed it right along through here. Do your best to avoid any hot or moving parts. And you can also use zip ties along the way just to keep everything secured. So it goes up and over our subframe. It's kind of tough to see, but here's where it comes out. And I just have it running kind of along those factory lines. And when you get to here, if your vehicle has this underbody panel, there's just a handful of 10mm bolts like this that you can zip out, and this will lower down. But wire comes up along, and then essentially I just follow our brake lines up to the front. And the wiring goes right up there through our engine, or up into the engine compartment. If you're having a hard time getting the wire up there from the bottom, you can always take a coat hanger, like a metal coat hanger, and straighten it out. Drop it down from up top, and then you can tape the wire to it. In the engine compartment, here's where our wiring comes up. And about this point, you want to cut all the remaining gray sheathing off. That way we can just work with the 2 wires. We're going to focus on the black wire first. So this is going to run right along through here and get connected to the circuit breakers that we installed. So really straightforward. You have a 40 amp breaker, which is this one here, and a 20 amp breaker, which is this one here. So that black wire runs over, and that's going to get connected to the silver post on the 40 amp breaker. So obviously cut at the length, crimp on a ring terminal, slide the terminal over the post, and then tighten the nut down. It's a 3/8 size socket. Then you can take whatever black wire is left over and cut it in half. Then on the end of it, crimp on small ring terminal, hook that up to the gold colored post on the 40 amp breaker. And then with the other half of that black wire, crimp on another small ring terminal and hook that up to the gold post on your 20 amp breaker. These are going to run over towards the battery, so they both come along through here, where we have them coming out right here. And eventually these are going to get hooked up to the positive battery terminal, but we're going to do that once everything's done. That way we don't have live wires. But on both of those ends, you can crimp on the larger ring terminals. And like I said, eventually we'll come back and hook them up to the positive post there. As far as the white wire goes, so you're going to have quite a bit of length of it. From this point, maybe 8 foot, if I had to guess. Stretch it out and cut it in half. So that way you'll have about 4 or 5 foot of wire coming out of the duplex, so the gray sheathing, and then just a random 4 or 5 foot piece of white wire. So those are both going to get ran to the inside of our vehicle, but get to that in a minute. That piece of spare white wire that you now have, what you can do is come back to your breaker, your 20 amp breaker, crimp on a ring terminal and put it to the silver post. All right, and what this wire is going to do is actually give power to our brake controller, and what the white wire coming from here is going to do, so this end of the white wire is the one that actually is connected to the back of our 7-way connector at the back of our vehicle. That's going to eventually get connected to our brake controller plug that sends out the electric brake signal. So with that said, it's not a bad idea with these being the same color wire. So for example, like this one here that goes to our breaker, on the end of it I put some black tape just to help me identify what wire is what. So you're actually able to get a decent look at the hole. So I did have to drill it out. I drilled it from the inside and pushed a grommet through it, but this is how it turned out from the outside here in the engine compartment. Underneath the dash here on the driver's side, here's where I drilled that hole. Obviously when you're doing this, make sure you're not gonna just drill through in a random spot and hit something important, but pretty wide open here. So created a hole, I believe it was a 1/2 inch size hole, and then I just used a 1/2 inch size grommet or snap bushing that you can put in there. That way the wires aren't rubbing up against bare metal. In terms of the brake controller install kit, it's pretty much completed, with the exception of hooking the ring terminals up to the battery, giving them power. But with that said, I mean, for the majority of people, the next few parts that we're going to do will be very, very similar. And what that entails is simply taking our brake controller connector plug and getting it hooked up. So like I said, almost all the brake controllers are going to be very similar to this. So if yours is and you want to follow along still, feel free to. If yours is a different setup than this, refer to your brake controller's instructions to continue along. But like I said, chances are really good you're going to have something like this. But we'll go ahead and start to get this hooked up. So brake controller plug. This should come with your brake controller. It's going to have 4 wires, a white one, which will be ground. And with this one, I just crimped on a ring terminal, and we'll ground that out eventually. The red wire, that's going to be from your stoplight switch. That's going to give a brake signal to the brake controller. Black wire will be power, and then the blue wire will be the electric brake output. So from our brake controller install kit here, we know that the wire that I put the tape on, that's our power wire. And so that leaves this plain white wire, which is our electric brake output. So what I'm going to do is take the butt connectors, just using regular type ones in here since it's inside. Really shouldn't have to worry about moisture and stuff, and if we do get moisture and stuff like that, we probably have bigger issues anyway than worrying about this. So we'll just use the ones that come with it and get them crimped on. And then what I'll do is So, you know, the white one is for electric brake output. And our white wire with the black tape, just like I said, is for power, so that'll go to the all black brake controller wire there. What I went ahead and done now, the white wire from our brake controller plug, like I mentioned earlier, that was a ground. And so crimped on the ring terminal and there along the sheet metal here. So if there is a piece of plastic that runs right here, you can pop that off. Really the only thing you have to look out for is, so you have your hood latch mechanism here, you just pull straight back on that latch or on that lever and it'll pop off. Just like we did in the back, you're going to take a self-tapping screw and ground it to the metal there on the side of our vehicle. For the red wire on our brake controller plug, that's going to have to get hooked up to our brake light signal from our vehicle. So if you look at this big red connector plug here, this factory connector plug, and if you're looking at it head on, the top left corner, 3 pins down, that's going to be the wire. It's a green wire with a black stripe, and just to verify that's it, you can take like a paper clip or a thin piece of baling wire or something and just very carefully push it into the back of it there, and then you can take the included test light, ground one end out. So there's a little clip up there, I just clipped it along that ground that we just did. Hold it on the metal here, and this light should only come on when you hit the brake pedal. So I'm pushing the brake pedal down and the light is illuminating. So we know that is our brake light signal. So now what we're able to do is we'll figure out a way how to connect our red wire into that circuit. So I got this hooked up. What I did was I cut that green and black wire in half, stripped back the ends of the insulation, put on a blue butt connector on this end first, and then I twisted, obviously stripped back the wire on the red wire as well. But then I twisted the red wire and the other end of the green and black wire. I twisted them ends together, shoved both of them in the other end of our butt connector, and crimped it down. And that's going to complete the circuit and give us that brake light connection, brake light signal that we need. And then our wires, what I did was I just routed them up, and we actually have this fuse panel cover here, right? So that just pops out. And I ran them through the little opening, the handle. And I figured that was really convenient because where this is mounted, this is the bracket for the brake controller. Where this is mounted, when this is plugged in, if you still need to get into the fuse, you're going to be able to. You're going to have that extra slack in the wire there. So worked out pretty good. So this is already mounted up. You know, pretty straightforward. There's a small bracket here that you just screw into the plastic, and then this plastic deal screws into that bracket. With these, I do suggest before you mount up this metal portion, with these I do suggest taking the machine screws that they give you and running them through the plastic already, because this don't have threads in it, so sometimes it can be kind of a pain to get them going. So it's a little bit easier outside on a tool bench to just start them screws in there. It'll kind of pre-cut the threads, and then once you put everything together up here, it'll just go together so much smoother. So I went ahead, put our plastic panels, just pop them back on, and now we can take our brake controller and simply just plug it in, and then just snap it in place in our holder here, and then we'll be able to go under the hood and hook up our power wires. Come to our positive battery terminal. I have this nut here, and you can pull this off using a 10 millimeter size socket. Pretty straightforward stuff here. You're just going to take the ring terminals, put them over the stud, run the nut back down. Our brake controller is lit up and has power, but That's only one portion of it. I hooked up a test box at the back of our vehicle to simulate a trailer. That way we can test all the functions and make sure everything is working properly. Go ahead and run through everything. I'll hit the manual override on our brake controller to make sure it's putting the output out. So we have that. Top right corner of the box, we have our auxiliary power. Try our left turn signal, our right turn signal, our brake lights, and our running lights. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the etrailer.com Universal Brake Controller Install Kit on our 2022 Hyundai Palisade.